Okay, members, welcome to the 63rd meeting of the Public Accounts Committee in this mandate. Can I advise all members that the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online, and there could be a slight delay between public and private sessions, so please be patient with the system. Can I also advise those who are joining us in the public gallery, they're most welcome, to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode, and that all devices are muted, and that you can connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi by using the password details from the gallery rules, and it is not permitted at any time to take photographs or record any part of today's meeting. We have apologies from John Burrows MLA, and I've also received apologies from Colin Gilderney MLA. Joining us online is Tom Buchanan MLA, and other members are here at present. Paddy Delargy will be joining us soon, hopefully. Okay, members, we'll go to draft minutes. Can I refer you to a copy of the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February? It's at page 6 to 11 of the meeting pack. Can I seek agreement that those minutes are an accurate reflection of that meeting?
Agree.
Okay, thank you. I'll sign that. That's great. Okay, members, as with all our sessions, it's important to remind you that you have considered the full agenda for the meeting, and that any relevant declarations of interest are made early in the meeting, so they're recorded in open session. So at this point, I'll ask that members anything to declare.
Yep, Chair. APS to Communities Minister. Just thanks.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, members. We have nothing under Chair's business today. We move to matters arising at pages 15 to 16 of the pack is correspondence from Declan McGowan, the Interim Accounting Officer for DFI, responding to further queries raised in the query into road openings by utilities. Are you content to note the correspondence? Okay.
Pardon me.
Okay, members, we have no correspondence under item 6. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the Memorandum of Reply on child poverty in Northern Ireland. This is the 12-month update. Can I refer all members to the clerk's memo that has been provided at pages 19 to 21, the Department of Finance report removing the barriers to the Children's Services Cooperation Act at pages 22 to 58, and the MOR update at pages 59 to 65, which makes disappointing reading, and we'll cover that in a moment. So at this point, I'll ask the clerk to brief the committee.
Thank you, Chair. So just as to recap, the child poverty report was published on the 7th of November 2024, and an MOR was then published on the 19th of December 2024. So the committee had asked for a 12-month update. There had been a bit of correspondence just previous to that. So this is the 12-month update. So in the response, the department highlights that the draft anti-poverty strategy remains with the executive, and that this limits progress against a number of recommendations. I think this is highlighted very much in the table. You'll see from the table that most of the recommendations are still in amber, which still means that progress is ongoing and that they haven't been implemented. There is a number of reasons that is given. So while they were accepted, you can see yourself that progress has been slow. Recommendation 8 and 9, they have been accepted and completed, so you'll see they're in green. So one of them is about monitoring and reporting mechanisms, and the other one is the Children's Services Cooperation Act. In terms of engagement with the voluntary sector, recommendation 10 and 11, it would appear again that progress has been slow. Recommendation 10 is about a formal engagement strategy to be taken forward, again upon approval of the executive strategy. So I would question there, has that actually stalled, or has there actually been any engagement? And then recommendation 11, is to work to build a comprehensive list of community and voluntary sector. That is still ongoing. So I think in terms of, some positives, that work has been undertaken to address barriers to the Children's Services Corporation Act, which was something that was highlighted during the inquiry. But as I've said, the majority of the recommendations within the PAC report are dependent on executive approval and therefore remain incomplete. So that is a summary of the letter and where the report and the recommendations currently are.
Okay, thank you, Clerk. I've no doubt members will want to speak on this, but before we do, I have a number of points that I want to make. This response, this Memorandum of Reply, is entirely and wholly unacceptable from the Department for Communities. How any senior officials believe that this is an acceptable response to this Public Accounts Committee needs to think long and hard about what they've put in. It's extremely weak. It's a light touch response. It relies on an executive strategy. Actions are on hold until the strategy is agreed. Very little on what can be done now. Questions on engagement with the voluntary community sector, lack of timelines, lack of clarity. And this tells me a very simple thing, and I hope the officials are watching. They haven't learned any lessons from anything that we have went through with them. They haven't listened to the community and voluntary sector. They're not taking this issue seriously. And I want to know what a department the size of the Department of Communities is doing, if they're telling us in an inquiry that this is a very serious issue, it's a priority for the department, and doing very little to nothing whatsoever to implement any of the recommendations that we, as a Public Accounts Committee, have put forward. Out of the 11 recommendations, only 2 have been given a green light. The rest are all amber. Recommendation 11, fairly straightforward. Work to build a comprehensive list of the community and voluntary sector. What on earth takes this length of time to compile that list? It's not acceptable whatsoever. And members, I've no doubt you want to go in detail on some of these recommendations and how disappointing they are. The timeline one, we're back to square one with that. Clearly the department officials weren't listening to the concerns of this committee and the community and voluntary sector that very, very clearly laid out the challenges that exist. So I'd propose 2 things. This is a major issue. We've heard about it. We see it on the ground as public representatives, and this is a challenge that is worsening, not improving. And we've got a department that's supposed to be the lead department that is hiding behind the strategy. It's not acceptable. My proposal as chair is that we bring the officials back before this committee. We don't invite them. We tell them to come back before this committee, and we tell them that this is unacceptable. Very, very clearly, and that signal should go to all departments. I've never seen anything as weak in my entire time in this assembly as that response. It's wholly unacceptable. It wouldn't be accepted in the private sector. It's certainly not going to be accepted here. The other is, I think, given the time and expertise that has went into this inquiry by those who kindly give their time from the community and voluntary sector to give evidence, invaluable evidence and experiences to this committee, I would suggest that we invite them back to shine a very bright light on the ongoing and worsening crisis in terms of child poverty across Northern Ireland and how these delays and excuses are affecting people who are already struggling. So I'll go to Diane as the Deputy Chair, and then we're open to the floor members.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's very disappointing when you see this set out this way. The table is very helpful to set it down, and it just makes me think of whenever we were speaking to the Treasury Office of Accounts, and we talked a wee bit about the MORs and whether they're executive ones or whether they're departmental ones, and it feels like all of the ones that are sitting here as amber are being placed that way because they're saying it's due to a decision of the executive, but I believe our recommendations could have been picked up in other ways by the department. So I certainly would like to see the department in to speak to them directly on the child poverty piece. On your second proposal, I would be keen to hear from the department officials maybe first to see what they have done by way of community and voluntary sector engagement. Just to declare I'm the chair of the all-party group in voluntary community sector, and I know there has been some engagement, but I would be keen to hear from the department what that looked like, to make sure if you were bringing people in, you were bringing in a full range of whoever was engaged and how they felt they were being engaged, because I know our evidence in the past were from certain groups and how they were being engaged with. So just to get a full picture of, from the department first, did you bring people in, and then to be able to hear from them as well, just to get that full picture.
Thank you, David.
I absolutely agree with everything that's been said. Whenever you break everything down of this place, of why we're here, this has got to be one of the most fundamental delivery items that we can. This and access to GPs we'll deal with here are some of the most primary issues that need to be dealt with. I think a couple of points on this. I think what I've said before, also that we're holding the Department of Communities to account in this case, on this one. But this is right across all the communities. We need to be able to hold each department that holds a bit of this, because this sits right across. Nothing sits neatly within the one department, and it's far too easy for one department to go, it's not my remit, it's executive or as a whole, or it's in education, or it's in whatever that is, health or whatever. We absolutely have got to be able to hold each one of those to account on this, as well as the Department of Communities. Not saying they shouldn't be held to account, but it's right across the board. This stretches impacts that we can't keep siloing everything down to one department, because the issues are across multiple. So that I absolutely agree with listening. The other part with I think the department have not, and again, it's not just this one department, it's right across. The role of the voluntary and the community sector is actually the delivery part. So whenever there's a break or a gap between the people that are at the front face of delivering a lot of the impact on the ground and actually delivering what government wants, whenever that connection is gone or isn't there, there's a real problem, and there's a real huge problem at the minute. And I worry this moving forward, where that funding is now been reduced on that, on the voluntary and community, that with that Share Prosperity in the UK funding swapping around to capital, that we're actually going to make this situation even worse. So if we're bringing people in, we need to do it fairly quickly and get on with this and do it, because it started with, this is fundamental to who we are and what we're delivering. So thank you.
David, anyone else? Cal?
Oh, Chair, listen, I would agree with all the comments and words. I do agree with you, and I mean, if you look at it, and the only way for us to deal is to bring the people back, and that's a proper conversation about it. So I would support that. I mean, we could talk all day about it, but we all see here what's happening. So I would agree with your approach and your suggestion, Chair, to bring the officials and whoever we need back in to have a conversation. Yep.
Thanks, Cal. The only thing we need to confirm is in which order. Diane has suggested we bring the officials first, right? And then the community and voluntary sector. But if I'm just working out what would be most effective. Is it better that the community voluntary sector, who can paint a very honest and open picture of where things are first and give us that evidence so we can challenge the department, or is it better the other way? And that's really the running order.
My point was, the last time, whenever the voluntary community sector were in, it was specific organisations that were involved in the previous co-design before the thing went forward, and it was a lot about how they felt in that co-design process rather than just about the child poverty piece. So I just would be keen to hear from the department, what have they done on child poverty, what engagement have they had before we get brought back into that whole whatever happened those couple of years ago. And whenever you got that, take that forward. That was my thinking on it. That's the way I remember that session.
I know what you're saying here in terms that you want the information prior to meeting the department so we can ask the most sort of pertinent questions. So, I mean, I would have naturally thought community and voluntary sector first and then the department in terms of sort of hearing their voice first. But I'm wondering even to maximise, because this is about ordinary people, it's about ordinary communities. Do you even have, I mean, I don't know if we have space to have 3 sessions where we even, if we don't meet with the community and voluntary sector first, we at least ask them to provide us with an update, whether that's in an informal session, whether it's in writing or submissions or whatever, prior to meeting the department, just so that we can absolutely hear those issues. But I think it's imperative that those organisations also have a chance to respond to what's said as well. So it's just, I wonder, sort of, it's more like a sandwich rather than sort of we hear from department or community and voluntary or vice versa. I just think we are actually giving community and voluntary organisations the opportunity to hear from them twice and actually to respond on what they've said. So it's just a thought. But
it's a good suggestion. So just to confirm then, Patrick, what you're suggesting is we write to the community and voluntary sector to gather that information. We invite in the officials and then invite in community and voluntary sector. Is that right?
I'm keen to hear what other people say. It's just to try and give a suggestion that here's...
And then Stephen.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense to do it that way, to allow them. I said about the funding, I was at a group yesterday, we had an economy committee in off the Shankill in Impact. They've their staff level for the project, because of funding, is going from basically to a third. So it'd be useful to have the voluntary groups actually just to hear what they've been decimated, right? So to have the communities of what the minister or what the department's doing, and then here actually, I agree with that. If we got the information, then had the department, and then you were able to follow that up, it would give a bit of time to enable them to actually give us a reality of what and respond to what the department had said.
Okay. Stephen?
Just thanks, Chair. No apologies, I wasn't about here in 24 in the PAC, but when you say the community voluntary sector, just, you know, how wide or how narrow is that, I suppose, scope? Keen to know, and is there any merit in, you know, going beyond the people that were maybe involved before? Or
We used the co-design group previously, and there was actually very, very strong evidence that came from that session, particularly from Bernardo's.
okay.
So I think members were happy. Now, there might be some changes in the personnel.
Yeah.
With the passage of time, that's a natural thing. But I think we did get a lot from it. If members are content, I'd be happy to go in a similar vein.
Okay.
Tom?
Thank you, Chair. And again, just to reiterate what others have said, the report is disappointing in that out of all of the 11 recommendations, there's only 2 that has got into the green. The rest are in amber and seems to be ongoing. And I do agree, we do need officials back just to find out exactly what they have been doing because of the work that was put into this. And to think now that, you know, 12 months or more on, we're still sitting a lot of this within amber when it should really have been moved on to a further stage. I think we do need the officials and to question them again as to what they've been doing over this period of time.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And before we agree the proposals as discussed, we stressed as a committee to the officials how urgent this issue was. We said time and time again that we did not want this to drag on. They gave us assurances that that would not be the case, and here we are sitting 12 months later, and really it hasn't moved very much, if at all, in the direction that they had committed to. So I think Padraig and Diane's proposal a mixture of both there. So we'll write to the community and voluntary, the relevant groups, and seek out that information, evidence, etc. And we then will ask the department to come back, department officials, and then we'll have a formal session thereafter with the community voluntary groups. Are members content with that? Yeah. Okay. So given that this is an MOR, we have to respond, aside from doing it in live session as we are. So I'm proposing further as chair to write to the Communities Committee as well to let them know that the work on this particular area is ongoing and to keep them updated, because I know that it's an issue of particular concern for them. But whilst replying to this MOR and inviting the officials back here from the Department for Communities, I would like a very strong reply that outlines the sense of frustration and disappointment that this committee has echoed in relation to this reply, for the various reasons that I had said, and I'll say it again. It's a light touch response. Its reliance on hiding behind the executive strategy, actions on hold until the strategy is agreed, very little on what can be done now, questions, around the engagement with the community and voluntary sector, the lack of timelines, and a huge emphasis on that, and the lack of clarity. It really is an abysmal, unacceptable response to something that they told us was a priority issue for them. And I think it's important that we send that message quite strongly. We can't have departments, after we're spending a huge amount of time, we're bringing witnesses in who are extremely busy, particularly in the community and voluntary sector, giving us their time and their expertise and shared experiences, only to be given this. I wouldn't even call it a response to something that is of huge concern to all of us. So I think a very strong reply that echoes our concerns and tells officials that we want them back. This should be a signal to all the departments. If we're not happy with the MORs, they're going to be brought back before this committee. This answer might be light touch, but this committee is not light touch.
Yeah, and I just also want to comment on one of the ones that are green.
Yeah.
It's on the barriers to the Children's Services Cooperation Act, and it's good to see the report coming through from the Department of Finance, but I don't think that just makes that green. I think we should be following up on that. So if you actually see that report on page 18, like their actions are just, here are the barriers, and we're going to regularly review this. So maybe we should write to say, like, well, that's great. Can we also keep an update on how that's actually happening, and has the Act been used at any point in time? Because just publishing a report of what the barriers are isn't really making the Act be used.
Well, that's a good suggestion. Members content? Okay. Thank you, members. We've agreed those actions, and we'll await a response and confirm a date for their attendance at the committee. Okay, from one mess to another, members, we're now going to look at the MOR on access to general practice in Northern Ireland, and this interesting bit of reading is at pages 76 to 82 to 87, and the clerk's memo is at pages 76 to 81. And the Department of Health and Social Care reset plan is at pages 128 to 144. At pages 98 to 127 is a copy of the recent report by NIPSO on the removal of patients from their general practice service, which members may wish to consider alongside the issues identified in our inquiry into access to general practice. At this point, before we discuss the findings of this MOR, or this response from the Department of Health, I'll ask the clerk to brief members. Padraig?
Sorry, Chair, apologies for being late. I just wanted to make a declaration of interest before we started onto this item, just as somebody with quite a few close family members here, GPs, and then also a family member who's a former BMA rep as well.
Thank you, Padraig. Yes, Alicia, could you give us a brief and then we'll discuss?
Thank you, Chair. So in summary, 8 recommendations have been accepted and 2 partially accepted. I would say that more needs to be read into that in terms of the detail, which is set out in the table. Some of the, I'd say, positive things is that the MOR clearly sets out a commitment to structural reform through the neighbourhood model, and a continued expansion of the multidisciplinary teams rollout. However, a number of the responses rely on lengthy timelines, resourcing availability and contractual negotiations. Again, the detail is in the table. Of the 10 recommendations made by the committee, 5 are adequately addressed and are labelled green, and 5 have been partially addressed, which are in amber. I would stress this is very much, an interpretation of the MOR. So in terms of some of the detail, recommendation 1 has been partially accepted and has amber beside it. I would say that this one in particular would need a bit more clarification, and you know, just in terms of whether you feel it's been fully addressed. Recommendation 2, the talk about the data. However, you know, there is data out there, and you may want to sort of seek clarification on whether that's adequately being used. Recommendation 4, which is an amber, I'm just sort of like highlighting a few here that sort of warrant a bit more attention in certain ways. But the department, they have committed to the development of a workforce strategy for primary care. If you recall, this was like a major theme in the inquiry. However, I think it's the timeline. Again, you may wish to sort of go back and ask for a bit more clarification on the rationale behind that timeline. It'll be completed, it says 2028 to 29. But, you know, given that that is quite a way off, you know, it's unclear as to how, you know, in the absence of that workforce strategy, they can progress some of the issues. Yeah, so recommendation 7, again, that's partially accepted, so I just wanted to highlight that one, and there's some detail around that. The target implementation date is the 30th of November 2027. Recommendation 9, there was quite a lot of discussion around the benefits of e-prescribing. So, you know, on a positive, a business case has been completed, or will be completed by March 2026. But the implementation for that is the 31st of March 2030, and is dependent on available funding. Those are some of the highlights in the MOR. So, I mean, the MOR does show commitment to structural reform through the implementation of the neighbourhood model of care and the ongoing rollout of the NBT. But some of the timescales for delivery against recommendations remain lengthy, and many of the actions remain subject to availability of workforce and funding. So maybe a question would be, you know, what can actually be taken forward in the interim, you know, to give the committee some sort of assurance on short-term improvements in access to GPs and on the sustainability of the proposed reforms.
Thank you, Lish, for that. The previous MOR we just discussed was bad, but this is 10 times worse. And I don't know if whoever signed it off is considering this committee as fools by hiding behind this illusion that they're doing something whilst doing nothing, by sticking ridiculous timeframes on vitally important actions that they were committed to. It reeks of complacency. It's insulting to this committee and to the work and effort that has been put in by countless people that contributed to this important inquiry, not least the 15,000 members of our public that responded to the consultation, who we assured would have their voices heard in relation to how disastrous the access to GP services is across Northern Ireland. This is infuriating, to say the least. It's entirely unacceptable, and it just stinks of business as usual by the Department of Health. And unfortunately, given that this committee has spent a huge amount of time on this, and that the staff of the committee team has spent a huge amount of time on this, and the NIO has spent a huge amount of time on this, it is infuriating that any senior official felt it was appropriate to sign this off. And that's even before I go into some of the details in relation to the recommendations. You know, my 9-year-old nephew would have written a better response than this and would have been more realistic with the time scales than what's in here. This just tells me, as the chair of this committee, that this is a department that's not taking this issue seriously, is not listening to the public, and is not willing to address the problems that exist. And that is not going to be happening. So first and foremost, I would be proposing that we bring the Permanent Secretary back, and that if he's misfortunate enough to be listening to this committee, that they get a message and understand that they better come here prepared, because we're not going to be accepting this in any way, shape or form. 2026 for a business case on e-prescribing, which is fine, which is next month, but it won't be implemented to 2030. What on earth are they doing? Are they going to Mars to find the plan? I can't understand how they think that that is acceptable in any way, shape or form. There's already surgeries that are 10 times ahead of the department, 100 times ahead of the department, that are implementing these things. There's examples of best practice that are there. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. And here we have a situation where they're saying 2030. In today's age, with technology moving the way it is just so infuriating. And that's only one of them. The other, in relation to the workforce strategy for primary care, what is going to take them until late 28, 29? They couldn't even give us 28, this is 29, to implement that. What are the officials doing within the Department of Health? And if they're telling us on a daily basis with no funding for X, Y and Z, and we're all sitting sympathetic to that reality of the financial pressures within health, but aren't willing to put in place changes that could actually improve the experience of people on the ground, that will bring about an intervention that will save money in the long term. This is complete and utter nonsense. And the Permanent Secretary, or whoever signed off this reply, should be utterly ashamed of themselves, because similar to the one on mental health, and there seems to be a trend from the Department of Health that they feel that they're unaccountable. This is wholly unacceptable, and they should be embarrassed by that reply and by the timescales that are there. And again, members, as you can sense, and I'm sure you will share the frustration because of the time and effort went into this, we should be bringing them back in here, and we should be telling them in a very strong signal in whatever reply we send to them or agree to send to them that they better come here prepared, and not with these feeble excuses or illusions, and a more realistic time frame for the delivery of some of these very important recommendations that this committee, which was informed by the public and the evidence sessions we had recommended to them. It's just disappointing. And then MDT rollout and support for non-MDT areas, 2 phases. It's as obscure as anything I've seen. 25 to 29 for one phase, 29 to 31 for the next. What about quality of service? What's people supposed to do for 5 years? Like that, it's just not acceptable. And if they think that this committee is going to accept it, then they can think again, because we'll shine an even brighter spotlight into what has gone on within the department. Services on the ground are struggling. People can't access important health services, and as a result, it's buckling the emergency department. And yet we have the Department of Health that are saying, we understand the problem, we're just doing nothing about it for 5 years. So I think it is really disappointing. I'm sure others will have plenty to say about it. Deanne?
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I agree with you. When I saw this MOR response coming through, I was just a bit shocked at how wordy and waffly it was. It felt like, the concise nature of our recommendations and the 15,000 people who responded to our survey was not taken seriously, and it's incredibly disappointing. And as you say, it's like the mental health one, where you just wonder, this week we had, coming out quite significant pay awards to senior health officials, whilst those on the front line are struggling with pay awards frozen. Are these people the people that are being paid to write these wordy responses and not actually deliver on the healthcare? For me, around the data, no surprise to any members of the committee, it's just unbelievable across recommendation 1, where you're seeing these things, they're just talking about it, but completely unclear as to how anybody's taking any of the data or trying to use it for any good. Recommendation 7, another one where they're pointing to the fact that there's no requirement that GPs actually say why they're handing this back, and whilst they've done a little bit of ad hoc work on it, it's so important to understand why these contracts are being handed back, and it is the responsibility of the Department of Health. And I think a core message that we had whenever we were asking the questions, and it was very clear in the responses, were the department does not feel that it is responsible for people in Northern Ireland having access to their GP. They very much see it as it's contracted out, it's the GP's problem. But for us as elected representatives, it's the number one thing people are coming to in terms of healthcare. They can't even get to their GP, and if the Department of Health officials can't see that's fundamentally their problem. And back to our report, we had all the evidence of people who were then presenting at A&E because they couldn't get to their doctor, they couldn't get their repeat prescription, deteriorations in health. all of those really serious and emotive examples that we had coming through in the survey, I just feel like they haven't been taken seriously here, and we owe better to those that took the time to respond to our survey and the people that we represent here, and definitely support bringing them back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Dale. David?
Well, yeah, I agree with both of you. I was just trying to find the page. One of the things that stuck out to me was we asked for the number trained or the workforce plan, and they said, well, we've got a 5-year plan. Well, give us last year's, because it'll only be 4 years left. So there obviously is no plan, and it is there's never been a plan, and this is just like, oh well everything's we'll work towards, or we'll get. There's no urgency. Whenever you look at you look at the 2 point what came through in one of the other reports, 2.5 billion that's spent on IT systems. You had a simple solution to link the e-prescribing that is there, a model. By 2030 it's out of date. Like they're doing a business case now for something that won't even exist, and it'll have changed and morphed in 4 years. It's just scandalous, to be honest. That I think whenever it comes down to reality, you're talking about physically having to drive a piece of paper from a GP surgery to a chemist for you to get that just can't be electronically sent, and we're talking about 4 or 5 years time before it is just beyond. That sums up everything within this. Again, with child poverty, and this is fundamental to absolutely everything. Somebody sitting, as Dan said, phoning 200 times in the morning to get through for a repeat prescription or whatever that looks like. It's just scandalous, and it just feels like there's loads of words there, but not any action. It's always, and we're always here, and we've got the same from the mental health you reference and the other. It's always we're going to, or we've got, ask for a 5-year review, and they're going, we're going to go to it. Well, then give us the one you've got, and there isn't one, and that's that fundamentally the problem. So I absolutely agree. We need it back in.
Just not living in the real world. Parcels are being delivered by drones to people's houses, and we can't order a prescription online. It just is. They're so out of touch with the reality. They really need to wake up. Anyone else? Cal?
No, Chair, I mean, when you look at it, we put a lot of effort and a lot of work into this, and I mean, it flies in the face. And I was going to raise the issue of the contract handbacks, but already Diane has raised that, and if you look through exactly where we're going with all of this here, the piece of work that we've done identified clearly all those issues, and where we're at the minute, and I mentioned this as a committee on the effort and time that we put into it. I mean, it's not acceptable, let's be honest with you. And I mean, I do agree with calling officials back and others to come in, but I mean, the fundamental thing for us is we put a big effort into this and here, and this is the kind of response we're getting. We need to be very serious about where we're at as a group ourselves, and as Emily is sitting here, and it's not about trying to identify individuals or picking or criticism. It's about a body of work we're trying to do ourselves, and it's it's bordering on the ridiculous in some of the response we're getting, to be fair. And I think we need to take a serious look ourselves at what we're doing, to be fair. And like I say, a big piece of work in this here, a lot of commitment to it, a lot of research, and it's not as if we left this behind us. We were forward thinking and proactive, and this is the kind of thing we're getting back. We need to be very, very serious as a committee how we handle it. But I'll leave it at that.
I think the letter that we're going to be writing should reflect the very blunt terms of our frustration. Tom?
Thank you, Chair. And again, I can't really add much to what has already been said, but it shows the disrespect that this committee has been held in, and also the all the people out there who responded to the consultation and so forth. And again, when we look at this report, then we really have to say it's no surprise as to the condition that the health service as a whole is in today, because whenever we get a report like this into GP services, which is something that's more, we could say it's more of a minor issue than what some of the other health issues are, and yet no, we get a report like this. It's appalling, to say the least. And I agree. We need to get the folk back again, and really need to be pressing them on these particular issues, because some of the delays in this is totally unacceptable after all the work that has been put into it.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. It's good to see that we're all on the same page in terms of our frustration and disappointment with this. So a couple of proposals similar to the previous item. So our members agreed that we bring the officials back urgently. Also that in our reply we'll be reflecting the unanimous disappointment of this committee in that unacceptable response. And you know, Tom used the word disrespectful. I completely agree. I think it just shows the contempt that the system has, and it needs to be addressed. Also, in terms of further approach, Lucia and I have just discussed there, I think on both items that this committee prepare a draft press release, bring it back next week to be discussed, to be released in relation to it. You know, we need to widen our accountability of this behaviour, because it's not going to be happening. So we'll bring back the press release and a letter next week to approve. Members, it'll be available slightly prior to that, but members are happy. But I think the clerk is under no illusion as to the tone of both, and that we are absolutely reflecting the frustration of people on the ground on these issues.
Okay. Are you proposing that for the child poverty
Both,
one as
yeah.
well? Yeah. Also, there's a request in from the Royal College of General Practitioners. They're keen to meet. I think they just want an informal discussion with the chair and deputy chair, if the committee were in agreement. They're keen to discuss the report and its recommendations. I had gone back to say, you know, the best time to do that would be after the MOR had been published. So, as I say, I've been keeping a line of communication open. So now that the MOR has been considered by the committee, then that just needs to be revisited in terms of whether you would, you know, sort of be content to meet with the chair, Dr. Ursula Mason, and the deputy chair, Dr. Emma Murta. They had been before the committee. They gave evidence to the committee on the inquiry. So they're keen to do that. And now that the MOR has come in, this would seem like an opportune time to take that forward. So
Yep.
I'm just putting it to you through the chair.
Yes, that's grand. We're happy enough with that. We could just arrange whatever. Monday or Tuesday would suit us best, wouldn't it? All right. I'm just thinking as well, in terms of that MOR on health, given that we're writing to the Communities Committee and updating them on the inquiry into child poverty, should we be doing the same for the Committee for Health?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Okay. Jan?
Yeah, look, thanks. Just to build on Cathal and Tom's comments, like, you know, we put an awful lot of work in this over a good, I don't know, must have been over a good 6 months. Like, the clerk team put so much work into the survey, so many people with so many personal stories, and the tone of that was coming through was exasperation of members of the public who can't get access to healthcare. And I think that us as a committee are now feeling exasperated with the tone at which we've been held in Department of Health. So, you know, us feeling like this from this response just is actually reflecting, I think, how the public feel whenever they're just trying to access these services. And I just think we just need to be incredibly strong in the tone that we take on this, because when people were exasperated, they came to us. Now we feel really quite deflated that this is what we've got at the first hurdle. So we just,
You know, I completely.
we just really need to push back. It is reflective of the feeling out there, and I think that the department, we can give the voice to. This is how you've treated us now. This is reflective of people, and it's just not good enough, because it's so much work and effort went to try to give these people a voice, and I think for this to have come back as the first attempt.
Well, the health system by design is there to respond to the needs of people on the ground at the point in which they require that need or that help, and this report, this MOR, and indeed the behaviour around the responses with the mental health recommendations and report that this committee put forward. It just shows you just how out of touch the Department of Health are with the issues people are facing on the ground, and the lack of urgency that these issues are being given. The situation isn't improving. Day on day, it is getting worse and worse and worse. We're going to have less GP practices by the time they implement some of these things. It just is absolutely appalling, and I think we need to send a very, very blunt message. You know, the public hold politicians to account. We stand for election, we get a mandate, we're accountable to the public. These officials are accountable to this committee and to the other committees as well. And for too long, it just seems as though they're quite happy with business as usual and allow members of this assembly to take the flak for the failings of the system. It's not going to happen. These are examples of where improvements could be made quickly and where there just doesn't seem to be an appetite to do it.
Just briefly, just to echo some of those concerns, I suppose I think it is a dismissive tone really, and I think it is dismissive not just of us as a committee but the public. The record 15,000+, which is a record, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it
fair
is.
to say. On the scale of it, even locally as an MLA contacted again this week on that very issue. Frustrations from people that simply can't get through. So it hasn't gone away. It's got worse even from from pre-Christmas when this was published. So I think it's dismissive of the scale of it and also the issue, the seriousness of it. So fully concur, I think, with everything's been said. We look forward to getting them back.
Yeah, Chair, and I mean, I'm just thinking that, and it's not even we created an expectation. We give people a voice out there, and they come to us, and we've done a report now. People have watched it. You've seen how people engage with it, and now I'm not saying there's an expectation, but certainly if something's going to work and we're going to represent people and we're going to do something as a committee to people out there, I mean, this was one report that reflected all of what we were trying to do in supporting them. And I mean, it looks, now looking from the outside in, we'll be questioning even ourselves, and that's not what it's about. It's about accountability, and it's up to us to lead. It's just when you get through it and when you see the responses, I'm not going to get into our lives, so there's other words I could choose. I'm just saying we have a job work to do. I agree with all the suggestions, but I'm telling you, this is our test as a committee. This is one of the biggest ones, to be fair. We've done a lot of good reports, but I think this is a real test for us now and see where we'll go with. And I understand all about budgets and all the conversations we've had and the department and how they're facing all the challenges. But for us, this is one test for us as a committee, and we need to clearly identify where we're at with it and what we're going to do about it.
And if we bring this home to reality, access to health services is literally a life or death matter in many instances. It's just not acceptable. It really isn't. I'm very annoyed about it. David?
I absolutely agree with everything that's been said. I think part of the problem that we have now as a committee is we have been that voice for a lot of people, and we have kind of opened the door and they expect to see changes. And I actually, do you know what, when I was reading it earlier on, I felt the Department of Health is the one department here that actually has the goodwill of every party in the chamber. They get away with so much because everybody wants to fundamentally be able to get a GP appointment and see good healthcare. So for me, this felt, when I was reading it, like they're taking that for granted. They're taking that support of the parties around the chamber and actually just throwing it back as is. They don't need to do anything. It's like, we'll do that whenever we can find. And that, it's where we go with that. So we can be strong and right back. But what is the process here? Because I actually feel like they're not held accountable to the level, or they don't feel they're held accountable, maybe. Sorry, it's a better way to describe it, that they're above that they have goodwill. But so if we pull them back and they just tell us, it's just a talk, it's just back and forward, but what are the mechanisms we can actually do beyond just bringing them back in here to...
It's a question I was asking earlier today to ensure, I suppose, that we can ensure that they are accountable. There's a couple of things. So obviously bringing them back is the first were to call for this committee, officials don't like having to be brought back. They should be embarrassed by the fact they're having to be brought back, and we're going to remind them why. Writing to them and expressing our annoyance at the answer they provided. The press release will also draw public attention in a wider way to the behaviour of the department on these issues. And a final point, which we haven't used yet, but I'm going to recommend it now, on the MORs anyway. We can bring a debate to the chamber, and I think it's time this committee did.
I think that's where we need to go.
So we can discuss how we do that, and for next week, Lucia will explore how that would look. But I think the key and the core part of the accountability mechanism available to us to ensure scrutiny, etc., is put into the assembly floor on it, because they don't like the very fact that they can reply like that and think it's going to go away is just ridiculous.
No, that's good. I didn't know the process of what because we go back, they come back in, like they'll repeat, they'll say the same, and they'll change the date. This is fundamental change. So it's actually, you know, it's just utterly frustrating. But it's how we get that. I think that's I support that 100%.
So that's when's the last time that's been done? A long time.
A while. We'd been holding off doing a take note debate would be the normal process for bringing reports to the Assembly. However, you need to have MORs in place to do that. So I suppose in my planning head, I always thought a take note debate, given that the GP one was so huge, that you'd be wanting to do a take note debate
On that.
once, you know, that MORs come through. Now I suppose the question is, you know, and this is something to think about, you could do a debate on this report, which would be different to what's been done before, but can be done, because as long as there's an MOR, you can bring one report, two reports. You know, the problem I always see with the take note debate, though, is if you've got too many reports, you dilute the impact. Whereas because this is such a serious issue, I think my recommendation, but I would like to give it a bit more thought, would actually just to be to focus on one or two, you know,
Well,
and
you
then
could, you could do it with this and the mental health one, because it's both under the same department.
yeah. So there's different ways of.
Same
I
issue.
guess there's different ways of doing it. You either do like a health related one, which is what you're talking about, or you could bring all of the reports back. But it's if you want impact.
You focus it.
But no, Chair, I agree with that, and it's funny. I was thinking that myself to bring the chamber. It's how we bring it and what format we bring it. To be fair, take note is take note, and I'm not being cheeky about it or, you know, dismissive about it. Sorry, but you know, if we're serious about having a conversation, and it's not just a motion to the floor for the sake of it, we need to have a conversation. One, whatever way we word it, and what we're bringing to the chamber, but also in terms of the effectiveness of this committee, which we need to look again, because we've done this now, and if this is going to be a pattern going forward, we need to have that debate also as part of that conversation in the chamber, not just this subject, but generally speaking, because I can see a pattern here coming back and forth. And I wouldn't want to, and I agree, I don't want to muddy the waters in terms of if it's cross mental health and all. You know what I mean, Chair? This is a big issue here for us in 15,000.
Well, I think
so.
You know, the
it's
committee
how we
has,
go about.
Yeah.
the committee in effect has been mandated by 15,000 people. They take it serious, and I think given the level of response, we could have a focused debate on this particular issue, and we could address within the core of that debate the wider issue of the lazy MOR replies we're getting from department officials. So I think it's a good thing. There should be a lot of people very uncomfortable about it, because it would shine a bright light on what is happening, and you know, to let the public know this is how broken the system actually is at the same time. So
Did you put a wee bit of thought in?
yeah.
Extra
So
thought
for
in
next
it,
week you'll bring it.
I think you need to focus it.
Yeah.
I think if we're doing it, it has to be focused on one thing. The minute you start to go across different, you know, if you focus on this and the response you get to everybody else, take note of that debate. But if the issue here is absolutely fundamental, and it's getting access to your GP, and that needs to be the absolute focus of any debate we would have. So,
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, I would appreciate then if we were able to get some advice through the clerk what this looks like. I don't really know the process or standing orders. Like if the committee was to bring it as a standing committee motion to the floor, does it have the same status? Because if you're going to have more of an impact by bringing in the minister, would we be better to take it as a private motion cross-party to actually get a response from the minister? But you know what I mean? So just to see what the status is or what it actually means. Like, I wouldn't want it to be just a take note and then nothing with no minister.
The
You know,
minister has to respond.
Okay.
And I think it would send a signal to this committee. We don't do this lightly.
Yeah.
We're doing it on this specific issue because we are infuriated by what we're seeing, and the minister would have to respond to this committee.
Well, thank you, Chair, because it was just clarity on what the process actually is there, you know.
Just in terms of the standing committee versus statutory committee, it's a committee motion, so it's how you word it.
Yeah.
You know, so you would want like a call to action in it, in the same way you would with the statutory committee. I think this would be different to other PAC ones that have gone to the floor because they have been taken note. But where this would be a departure, if this is, the route you want to go down, and I will come back next week, is that this is actually, and I think there would be, quite a good message in that as well, that this is an unusual step
absolutely
to take, and it is,
for this committee. It is
more than a take note.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be
Take
just
it so
asking
seriously.
them to take note, you'd be coming with a motion, so some consideration would have to be given as to the wording of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't think this can all be wrapped up in one meeting, if I'm being perfectly honest. So there's, as I say, there's a few steps. Yeah. So that would be something just to take away, give it some thought, and sort of work through steps and what needs to be done to actually have the impact. So I will take that away and work something up to bring back to you.
Okay, members, thanks very much for that. I think we did need to spend a bit of time in focusing in on the importance of those two particular areas, and that to send a signal to both the Department for Communities and the Department for Health officials, and indeed all the officials across departments, that we're not going to be accepting replies like the two we have received today, and that there will be consequences in within whatever powers we have as a committee, and we will use them. So with that said, members, we'll now go into closed session to discuss the next item in the agenda, which is the inquiry into homelessness, the formal consideration of the draft report.